did a video the other day with the very, very basics about bass guitar. So I thought it might just be fun. I quite enjoyed doing it, so I thought I might just do a really, really, really basic video on what a guitar is and why you want one. So it's like, if you're kind of, I think most of the people that watch this channel are guitar geeks anyway, but if you know somebody who's maybe thinking about getting a guitar, there's maybe some questions that are maybe a little bit scared to ask to start out with. And basically, yes, you kind of do want a guitar. If you've got the inkling, you think even for something to hang on the wall, you know, it's a cool thing, and it's easy to get something for not an awful lot of money that's fun, and it doesn't matter if you don't really ever learn how to play it. You can have fun, and if you learn a couple of easy things to play, much fun can be had. Just an enjoyable thing. You get an awful lot of folk that are mad into music, you know, but they don't actually play it. It just seems like you should maybe give it a go, even if it's just very simple things. I mean, there's an awful lot of really simple things you can play that sound really good. I mean, you know, some of the best guitar riffs and most exciting things to listen to aren't difficult to do. You know, it's like, even for someone who's just picked up a guitar, can play something recognisable in maybe not 5 minutes. You know what I mean? But sitting there for half an hour or something like that. Yeah. So if you're starting, really, there's really two sort of types of guitar. You get an electric guitar, which is a sort of solid piece of. There's obviously exceptions to all these rules. So it's a solid piece of wood, and you plug it into an amplifier to make it loud. And then you get an acoustic guitar, which I've got sitting here, which is just sort of wooden with a hole in the middle of it. So you don't need to plug this in, and you can still, you know, play it. This would be more for, you know what it is. As for which one would be the best to learn on, it really depends on what kind of music it is you like. Some folk think acoustics are cool. A good few of my pals are like, pure, the acoustic guitar is just awesome. And for me, acoustic guitars are still cool. I like all guitars. But really for me, it was all the electric guitar. It's just like, for me, it was just, you know, distortion and rock, really, was what I was after. So, acoustic guitars, been around for yonks. If you're buying a new one, this goes for electric guitars as well. If you know somebody that can play, take them with you when you go and buy it, especially if you're going to buy it used. I sort of don't want to recommend buying used guitars, unless you're buying it from unless you've got somebody there who knows to play it. Even if you're buying it used in a shop, you might get away with it because you get the store assistant to blast away on it and tell you what they think. You know what I mean? There's a few things. If something's not working right or it's hard to play, then you're not going to learn to play. My first guitar was actually broken. You couldn't play it down here because there was something wrong with the neck. So I don't know. Basically, I learned by playing Black Sabbath because I couldn't play normal chords. So that would have put loads of people off. It's just because if I hadn't been mad into Black Sabbath and wanted to play up here anyway, I would have just given up on the guitar after, you know, a couple of weeks of trying. So you need to get one that's at least all right. Yeah, so I'll go on with I don't know how long this video is going to be, I don't know how many parts it's going to have. I'm going to be pure basic as hell. This is a Telecaster, or there's an awful lot of copies kicking about. So this is a Telecaster. This one actually even says Fender Telecaster on it because it's a fake one I bought in China. But you can get Telecasters, all different price ranges, made by thousands of different companies, all different. This one's a slightly fancy one because it's got like this the scratch plate here is sort of made of this tortoiseshell thing, so it's a wee bit cool looking, and it's got this this is called binding around the top edge, which isn't normally on a Telecaster, but apart from that, it's a very similar thing. So this came out as the first electric Spanish guitar in 1951 or 51 or 52 or something like that. And it was a total revolution because what they did was, you know, all guitars were like that acoustic one there, and if you wanted them louder, you could fit an electric pickup into one of these acoustics. But the problem is, because there's sound coming out it, you couldn't get it up very loud before it started feeding back. So the pickup was picking up the sound, and then it was coming through the amp, and it was just going woo. So it was really difficult. This was a completely new concept. It was made as a sort of disposable guitar almost. The neck bolts on, Oh, this one's got slightly curved. It's normally just a square plate. There's lots of wee modifications you get. The neck was a bolt-on neck, and the body was just made out of a solid piece of wood, and it's just like a crazy invention. It's like, whoa, you can't have a guitar that does that. So basically, although you can play it, and it's, you know, it's fine for you sitting watching playing the telly. It's designed, you can't perform with it. You need to have it plugged into an amplifier to make it work. So if I go through the bits that are on, I go for the bits that are on it. So here, ultimately, you can see I've got lots of ones, different shapes, but most of these things kind of are the same. There really isn't, you know, something like, you know, one of these things you can imagine being for your heavy metal and stuff like that, but you can play Beatles and stuff on them. They just look a bit funny. And the same goes with this. You can play heavy metal on this. It's all the same. The strings are the same. The tuning is the same. The chords are the same. Everything's the same. It's just when you're playing this, you're not instantly going into, you're not going to be playing Metallica on it, but you can. I find it, I get a sort of perverse pleasure of playing incredibly heavy things on a guitar like this. But and it works the other way around. You just feel a bit silly, you know. If you're playing the Beatles on that, you would feel a bit silly. It would totally do it, and it would be absolutely fine. But yeah, so go on, right. So basically, basics to basics. This is the body. This bit. Yep. This is the neck. This is the headstock. The bit up here, the head. What happens is the strings vibrate between this part here, this white plastic bit on this guitar. It's called a nut. So the string comes over that, and it's got like a wee groove that holds it in place. String comes over that, flies the list here, and then goes over this bit here. This unit here is called the bridge, and the actual part of the bridge that it goes over is called a saddle. So the string vibrates between, I'll put some volume on so you can hear it. So the string vibrates between here and here. Yep. And if you make that string shorter by moving your finger up, it changes what note you're playing. I mean, I told you it was going to be pretty basic. So that's basically how it works. So at the headstock, you've got, I'll talk through all the wee stupid bits. These wee bits here, these wee metal pieces here, are called string trees, and basically all they do is hold the string down so that it doesn't jump off this plastic nut bit. Some guitars have them, some of them don't. This one, the Fender's got, it's a straight line. On something like this guitar, it doesn't need the string trees, because if you see, the headstock bends back the way so that the strings don't jump out of this plastic bit. Yeah. These are called machine heads, these turny things here, and there's one for each string. So basically what you do is you just wind that up, and it changes the pitch, because you've got to tune this to a certain thing. Obviously, if you turn it down, when you tighten up, and I'll use a tuner to put it back in the right note, right. There is different ways of tuning it. If you're playing extremely heavy metal, you want the strings slacker, but for all intents and purposes, nearly all the time you want it tuned to something called standard tuning. And the reason standard tuning is good is because you get lots of nice easy chords to play in standard tuning, and you can play pretty much anything. So if you're starting, I would just go for standard tuning. Yeah. So right, we've already got the neck. We've got this bit here, which is called the fingerboard or the fretboard, which is on this guitar it looks like it's part of the neck, and some Fenders it is part of the neck. On something like this, you can see that the fingerboard is the black bit and the neck is the red bit behind it, so it's a separate piece of wood stuck on the top. So fingerboard or fretboard. Frets are these metal bars that sit there to make it so you, like on a violin it doesn't have them, so you have to be very accurate, whereas in this it doesn't. It cuts this vibrating string into individual notes, makes it easier to play. The dots are called fret markers, and they are just for so you know where you are. You know, because obviously playing something here is different from here. But once you start getting up here, so you don't have to count up to 7. You know, it's got 3. There's the dots come on 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. Just so you don't have to count up. That's really all they're for. And on this guitar, there are dots. Some other guitars have got one line about that doesn't have dots. Oh, I don't appear to have one that doesn't have, yeah, that one there doesn't have dots. So you can, instead of having dots, you can be a bit more fancy and have things like this. This has actually got one on number 1 as well. But you know, it's like, it's just a marker. So the fancier guitars have that, and you pay extra for that. So basically, if you're buying a basic beginner guitar and it's got them on it, you start thinking they spend extra money on putting fancy bits on that you don't need. But that's my mantra anyway. So something like a Telecaster ideally should be cheap because it's cheap to manufacture. Right, this bit here, this plastic bit, is called the pick guard or the scratch plate, which is to stop you, just basically when you're strumming, is to protect the finish, but it's kind of for look as well. Makes it a bit more interesting. That's a pick, or a plectrum, depending on what you call it, just a wee bit of plastic used to hit the strings. Some people play fingerstyle. Up to you. Depends what you like. So as I said, this is the bridge. These are the electric pickups. A pickup is just basically a wire, with a magnet with a wire wrapped around it, and it's an electric guitar, but there's no actual electricity going through it. There is, but a very, 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 very small amount. There's a video, if you look up YouTube, of a guy who tried to make his own electric guitar, and what he did was he took the guitar cable and plugged it straight into a mains socket, and it's like, so it's got 240 volts going through it, and he just touched it and then it flung them across the room. It's like, so there's not actually any electricity in a guitar. There is, but it's like it's like a millionth of a volt or something silly. You know, it's like basically what's generated, the amount of electricity that's generated by your strings vibrating. So it's sod all. So don't worry about getting electrocuted as long as you don't plug it into like a wall socket or something stupid. You know what I mean? You plug it into an amplifier. On this particular guitar, Telecasters have they don't always do, but this is a metal plate. This would be called the control plate, and it's pretty common to have a volume control, which basically makes it louder. Yeah, and a tone control, which if you turn that down, it makes it less bright, so you get a sort of bright sound. Turn that on, just basically a variable sound thing. A lever here, so if you push this up the way, it gives you this neck pickup. If you put it in the middle, you get both the pickups on. If you put it in that position, you get the bridge pickup. And what it's doing there is the bridge pickup is quite bright and jangly. The neck pickup is more subdued, so you can put the tone control down and get quite a bassy sound. And if you're in the middle, you get both of them, which is a sort of in the middle sound. And that sort of applies to all guitars. You get ones that have got slight variations on it, but they're kind of, all guitars are sort of like that. Yes, so I'll talk about the pickups. So these are what are called, as I said, a pickup. You can see this one's a different shape from this, but I mean, basically it's the same thing. It's just, it's a sort of bigger one, and this is a sort of smaller one that's got a metal cover on it. They're all basically the same thing. So these are called single coil pickups because it's one magnet with a wrap of wire around it that's connected to the electrics, even though they're very low voltage electrics. The other types of pickups you get, the more common ones are like, if you look at this one, you can see it looks like it's got two pickups next to each other. Well, that's pretty much what it is. So this is called a humbucker, and what it does is the two pickups are both opposite to each other. So they're both, they only work as one, but it's gives you they both work against each other, which makes it less bright sounding, more powerful, but it doesn't you don't get the same amount of interference, which used to be a problem. It's not as bad as these days, but back in the 60s and stuff, with dodgy power sources and stuff, they would pick up interference, whereas the humbuckers don't do that as much. The humbucker was a later on invention. It was invented by a company called Gibson, and you'll know Gibson. This is a Fender. There's basically two big companies that started all this, Gibson and Fender. So that's a humbucker. There's different, as I said, there's different types. And if you look at this one here, I can't bother picking it up. This one's got like metal bars on it. See, there's a humbucker, and it's got a single coil as well. And then it's got humbucker. This has got metal bars on it. Same sort of thing, just a wee bit different. This one has black plastic covers on them. That's just an aesthetic thing more than anything else. It doesn't really make any difference. So I'm just trying to keep this as basic as I can. This, what they call this an ashtray bridge. This metal piece here, because there used to be, in the 60s they came with a metal cover that hid, you know, the ugly bit, and people used to take it off and use it as an ashtray with a metal cover. So this is you could also call it a hardtail, which means that the strings are anchored here. They actually come through the back on this guitar, but sometimes they just go into the top. And what you're thinking, if you look at another type of bridge, you get one. This is Fender's second electric guitar. Well, it's a copy again. There's lots of copies. You generally tell a copy by well, this one and that one do have the correct this type of headstock, the one that looks right. But you get a lot of copies, but it'll be something pointy and it'll look different because it's a copyright infringement to make a headstock that looks exactly like a Fender, but the body, it doesn't matter. Right, so this one has what you call a tremolo, even though, yes, it is a tremolo. No, it's not a tremolo. It's called a tremolo or a vibrato or a whammy bar. So you hit your, yeah, you'll know that sound. And what it does is it's got springs in the back here. So when you bend this bar, you can see this bit here moving. That makes the string, which if you've seen Hendrix do it, so you can do all sorts of crazy things. If you're a beginner, I would advise not getting one that with this, or if you do have one, use it very sparingly, because when you do that, the strings move and they tend to go out of tune, so your guitar mic will not stay in tune as long as it should. You can hear it going already. And you can obviously, if you're looking at Van Halen or something like that, they're like, whoa, you can bend it, they have it right. Do some crazy stuff with them. So if you've got the thing about a Strat is, if you've got this though, if you just don't use it, it kind of doesn't do anything. The other kind of bridge you can get, I mean, there's other variations. There's a thing called a Floyd Rose, which this guitar has. Oops. So it's basically the same sort of thing, apart from, you notice it's got like Allen keys and all these things. So this is a much more complicated version of it, and what it does is it actually clamps the strings on here, and if you look here, there's an extra bit here which clamps the strings down so it doesn't go out of tune. But if you're starting off playing a guitar, I would totally advise against getting one of these, because they're a nightmare to set up. It's different if once you know how to play, you can progress onto one of these. But there's an awful lot of beginner guitars that you get that have this, because people think, oh, I want a tremolo arm, and it's like, you really honestly don't, because it'll just be, until you learn how to use it, you've got to be able to play the guitar before you can really use one of these things. This was a bad example for me to pick up, because normally Floyd Roses, you can actually lift them up the way as well. So this, the bridge is actually floating, so you could bend it up the way and bend it down the way. So there's an awful lot of variance there for the strings to be out. They don't need to move much. You're only talking, I'm hardly moving that. And once it's out of tune, it's out of tune. And if you're out of tune, you sound rubbish. So if you're starting off, I would really advise against getting that. Yeah. So where are we at now? 20 minutes. I'm going to have to stop soon. Home to move on. Guitar, right? So this was the first electric guitar basically, and the big company Gibson, Fender were like a new company. They used to make amps and radios. They came out with this, and it totally took the world by storm after about a year when people started using it and realising that it sounded different from every other guitar. Gibson decided, we're going to have to make a solid body guitar, and they came out with a guitar called a Les Paul, Les Paul was a famous recording artist in the 40s, the 50s, and so Les Paul came out in 52 or 53 or early 50s anyway, and it's I don't actually have one because I don't really like them. There's something, because they're so, Slash plays one and Jimmy Page plays one. The guitar. It's so what they did was they had a special machine that they used for making fancy acoustic guitars. They could put a curved top on a guitar, so this is flat. So you get ones that are curved. I don't have a curved one just now to show you, but and they had a machine that made it curved. So what they did was, the Gibson people knew that Fender didn't have one of those machines, so they made one with a curved top. a similar sort of thing. This here's a Gibson. This is actually originally called a Les Paul. This is a slightly different shape, but it's more this layout. So you've got, as I was saying, these are these humbucker pickups. They weren't there at the very start, but they were there sort of 56, in a couple of years. So it's got these humbucker pickups, and instead of just having a volume and a tone, you've got a volume for each pickup and a tone for each pickup, and then a switch to choose between the two. Gibsons generally have a glued-in neck as well. See, this doesn't have the bolt plate. It's got this metal thing to stop the strap falling off. But generally got a bolt there. This would be, I've kind of skipped it. I've missed out the Les Paul because I don't have one, but this is a Gibson SG. So there's kind of 4 main electric guitars, which nearly all guitars are or are sort of based on. We've got the Telecaster, which I showed you there. You've got the Les Paul, which I don't have one of, but it's the one slash plate. You know what it looks like. You've got the SG, which is this one, which would be my favourite of the main sort of guitars, because this has I like Black Sabbath, AC/DC. It's got a sort of heavy metal vibe to it, but because it's just because it's a wee bit pointy and sort of cool looking. But the Doors, Robbie Krieger at the Doors played one, George Harrison played one in the Beatles. So it's got some. Clapton and Cream had one. So you can play. This wouldn't look wrong playing any sort of heavy metal, but it also would look fine playing the Beatles or the Stones, or there's one on the front of Stones album. It's like this is a totally bona fide vintage, but still a bit cool and pointy looking guitar as far as I'm concerned. So that's why I had to have, and if this is actually a real Gibson, I had to have a real Gibson at some point. So I bought this years ago. Leo's second guitar is the Stratocaster. This isn't a real one, it's just a copy. This one is the single coil pickups. I put these fancy ones in, but it should basically just have 3 the same as that. This one comes with, it's got more knobs, so it's still got the master volume. It's got a tone for this pickup and a tone for this pickup. This one doesn't have a tone, and it's got originally had a 3-way switch, so you had this pickup, and in the middle you had this pickup, and in the neck you had this pickup. The same sort of idea as the Telecaster. This is this is just like a Telecaster that when Leo Fender built his Telecaster, he spent a couple of years asking people what they'd like to improve, so they made it a bit more, it's a bit sort of carved here, and it's like cutaway in here, so it's a bit more comfortable, and having more pickups gives you more options. And it had this tremolo system, which isn't actually a tremolo, it's a vibrato. Tremolo means it gets louder and quieter. So it's like, if you imagine taking the volume control on your stereo and going whoa, 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 that's tremolo. Whereas vibrato, it's not getting louder and quieter, it's actually changing the pitch. So it's going yeah, 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 instead of going whoa, whoa. Yeah. But they call it a vibrato, they call it a tremolo, they call it a whammy bar, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and there was also the scratch plate, if you notice it, in order to make it cheaper to build. All the pickups and stuff are actually mounted, all the electrics are mounted on this scratch plate, so you could have the scratch plate built separately by somebody sitting just making scratch plates with all the electrics on it, and then someone else makes a guitar and on an assembly line they just plop it in, screw it on, done. Plop it in, connect up the output jack, which I should have mentioned, this is called an output jack. A lot of people call it an input because you plug the lead into it, but it's actually it's an output. But pretty much all guitars will have that. Again, there's exceptions. I've built one that's stereo, so it's like this pickup goes out one, and this pickup goes out another, so you can have 1 amp on one side of the stage and 1 amp on the other, and all silly things. Yeah, so that's me getting towards the end of this. Yes, so basically that's kind of all I really wanted to say. I'm going to tell you what an amp is. An amp is basically, it's just an amplifier. It just makes whatever it is you put in louder. So you've got like the actual amplifier and a speaker. You get an amp like this one. These are all big ones, big show-off, fancy ones for playing gigs. This is a bass amp, but it's the same principle. So this you'd call this a combo, because this top bit here is your amp. There's your volume control and all that, and then this bit's got a speaker in it. And something like this is you would call a stack. So here's the amp here, which is a separate thing, and then you've got individual speaker cabinets that are separate to it. But if you're going to be sensible, you'd be buying, really what you need is an amp this size for playing gigs these days. It's different back in the day, when you're playing Woodstock and stuff, you want something big and stupid like this, but you only need to, I'm just playing through this wee bit here. So this would be my combo. and then this would be like your stack system for this and this speaker. Yeah, I think that's where we go. And it's like, of all the sounds you can get, so there's really only two that would matter to me anyway, and that's clean. See, that way, this way you can play, you can still play. I said, you know, that's what you would class as a clean sound. So it's kind of like sounds a wee bit like an acoustic guitar. And even getting away with it, you can play acoustic-y stuff on it. No, it doesn't sound quite as good as an actual acoustic guitar for that, but as good as a term. Yes, it does sound. In some ways, it sounds better, but it depends what you're after. But what I like is distortion, which most amps do on them. But if you look down here, these are called guitar pedals, and I've got loads of them, and I very rarely use them. But the one I do like is one. If you turn the amp up really loud, you get this effect. But if you this pedal does it without you having to turn the amp up really loud, and it gives you that sort of Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, you know, that sound. And see, once you can play a bit of that sort of twiddly fancy stuff, it's amazing fun. Yeah, so as I was saying there, with these big massive amps, really, the reason I've got that one, in fact the reason I've got the other ones as well, is because it's really cool standing in front of a big massive amp. That's it. Really, I mean, I've been using that on stage in the bands I'm in. This is a bass amp. Oh, I've not actually got to that point. So this electric guitar, 6 strings, it's this long, which is, to be technical about it, on a Fender guitar it's 25.5-inch scale. The scale you measure is the length that string's vibrating from, so it's from the saddle to the nut, and you measure that, and that's 25.5 inches. On a Gibson type guitar, it's slightly smaller, just to be a bit different, so they're 24.75, so the strings are a little bit bendier on this, and everyone's a little bit closer together, but it doesn't really make that much difference to playing it. And then if you go up the way, you would get a bass guitar, which is a slightly different instrument. So there you can see there, it's longer, and it's only got 4 strings, and the strings are much fatter. Basically, it's still a guitar, a bass. So there's one I made that's got a bass and a guitar. It's just lower down, and you tend to play a bass on an electric guitar. You tend to play more chords, whereas on a bass you would really only play one note at a time. And it's exactly the same notes. Well, this on the fat 4 strings on a guitar are the same notes as the fat 4 strings on a bass. They're just deeper. So if you can play the guitar, you can play the bass. If you just and you can actually the original Telecaster was sort of designed to be a bass, so the original Telecaster had a slightly different way of doing the switches, and so it's kind of bassier, and you could use it as a bass if you didn't have one. So there is a difference in yeah. So I mean, actually, when I never used to know what a bass guitar was. I didn't realise you saw the Beatles playing that the 2 of them were playing guitars and one of them was playing a bass. It's still a guitar, but it's called a bass guitar, and you play it slightly different. So instead of playing on a bass, you would be more sort of playing. Well, the other one. And if you're clever, you can sort of do both at the same time. Yeah, so half an hour of talking absolute pish. If any of you guys are sitting there trying to get somebody to play the guitar and they fancy, so much of the fun, the joy of playing the guitar, I mean, I'm guilty of this as well, but a lot of people spend just as much time watching YouTube videos and looking them up and going, oh, that's a cool guitar, and pretty much everyone who plays a guitar likes every guitar. There's ones that nobody buy. I mean, I like to see these crazy shaped things, just because I think they look cool, and you know, and it's I think pretty much every guitarist would like it. Do you want a shot of it? Oh, aye. Do you want to buy one? No, no, no. It's not for me. You know, if you're mad into playing, you know, shadows music or acoustic music or sort of jazz or something like that, you're not going to buy something that looks like that. But you're still going to want a shot of it. You're still going to like it because it's still a guitar. There's very few guitars I've ever come across that I don't like. I might do a wee video next on if you're thinking of buying one from scratch. I've already mentioned it. I think basically the best thing to do is to try and ask somebody. I'll just run for another couple of minutes. Is if you know somebody who plays the guitar, and the better on the guitar they are, the better, and get them to help you choose a guitar to make sure it's a good one. But choose one that you like the look of. If you like the look of a Telecaster, if you think this looks cool, buy one of them because you're more likely to play it. Whereas if you prefer the look of the Stratocaster, you think that's to you. I mean, that's what most people think of as an electric guitar. You buy that. But if you get too much into watching all the YouTube videos and stuff like that, there's a good company called Andertons, which is basically it's just a shop, and the guy who owns the shop, I don't know, he's about my age or something like that, maybe a few years older, and he's quite enthusiastic, and him and his pal do videos and they set up. And the only thing I really got against them is because they're trying to sell guitars. It's the same if you go into like a big guitar shop. There's an awful lot of very expensive guitars, and it's like the opinion I think you would possibly get is going in thinking that a good guitar costs £2,000, a sort of all right one costs £1,000, and one that's basically only just good enough to play costs £500 or £600. Not really the case. You don't need to spend anything like that. I've never spent anything like £1,000 on a guitar. I mean, yes, if it's your passion, that's enjoyable. But don't buy something like that to start with. To start with, I wouldn't spend more than a couple of hundred, and even then, I would pretty much buy one at about £100. I wouldn't go less than £100. I think once you start getting down, you sometimes see them in Amazon and stuff like that. You know, like a 60-70 quid guitar. It's like there is a point where if it doesn't work properly, you'll never learn to play. But there's a couple of guitars. I would also tend to stick to the four shapes I mentioned, really, to start with anyway. So the Telecaster, Stratocaster, SG and Les Paul, they're never going to go out of fashion. They're always going to be popular. People are always going to want them. For me, they're a little bit bland, so that's why I play things like this. You know, but if you buy something like that, not very many people want to play a guitar that looks like that because it's really only for, I don't even know, glam rock or something. You know, like Kiss or someone would maybe play a guitar like that. You're not going to play that if you're into the Beatles or the Led Zeppelin. Whereas something like this, you can play anything on. I would recommend a Telecaster, but a Telecaster is a bit of a grown-up guitar. Not because it's hard to play. It's probably the easiest one to play. It's just it doesn't look as cool maybe as a Stratocaster. You know, this nearly all guitars you buy are this shape. But the thing about a Telecaster, if you're looking at as I said, this is a Fender. Fender have made guitars in America. The original ones, you know, they can go up to the original ones from the 50s can be worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. If you go into like a modern guitar shop, you can get ones that look like they're beat up, look like they're from 50s, and they can cost, the sky's the limit really, but you see quite a lot of them. It's £2,500-3,000, but basically it's just the same thing as this. You know, it's two planks of wood nailed together, and it's not that different from something like this. But so they're like handmade in America and all that, but they've got their own copy companies. You get lots of other companies that make copies of them. So to compete with that, they made their own ones. So they make them in China and Indonesia and other countries, and they don't actually say Fender on them, they say Squire by Fender, so they're actually sort of an official license, so they're the right shape, and they do some good guitars, especially the sort of cheaper ones. If you're going for the first guitar, I would have a look at there's a Squire, I think they might be called the Bullet series, so that they're kind of a wee bit plain looking. You know, it wouldn't have the fancy scratch plate, it would just have a plain black scratch plate sort of thing. But the Telecasters is probably the most sensible one to buy, because for some reason, because these are sort of so grown up and cool, they hold their value better. So I think that the cheapest one's maybe about £120, something round about there, and so you buy it because it's a decent make. It should play pretty good straight out the box and be good and do you. until you've learned to play properly. The thing is, like, apart from looking at it, playing something like this and then playing a £2,000 one, unless you're really good on the guitar, you're not going to actually even notice the difference between the two. And sound wise, okay, the £2,000 one is going to sound better, but it's going to sound that much better. It's not miles away. It's not. I would have a look at that. So Telecasters are maybe a wee bit more. It's a more sensible buy, but a lot of people don't like the look of it. Once you learn to play the guitar, you'll love them because they're so simple. Most guitars are Stratocaster shaped. There's also a Squier Bullet that's this sort of shape. There's actually one that you can get that's this sort of shape that doesn't have this. It's actually cheaper because it doesn't have this tremolo thing, which you don't want the tremolo thing anyway. And they're pretty cheap. I did a video a while ago on another Squier, which is called a Mustang, which is made by Fender but a few years later, so it's a slightly smaller, it's a really cool wee guitar, and there's like 110 quid, and it's good. There's also Epiphone, who are the same idea. This is Gibson, made in America, so you get Epiphone, which are owned by Gibson, but they make their guitars in China because they're cheaper to make there, and they sort of start around about this £120 mark, and you can get SG shaped ones or Les Paul shaped ones. You get all shapes. I mean, ultimately all these guitars, although they're all crazy different shapes, they're not really different. If you can play one, you can play them all. Right, if I was sensible, I would split this video into two, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it up, and so if anyone who normally watches my videos has anyone who's thinking about maybe playing the guitar, this would maybe just get rid of. It would take out an awful lot of the nonsense. Just whether they actually decide to get one, and ultimately, yes, I would. Because when you're talking about if you buy a decent one like that, or if you get your pal to help you get one of them second hand, even better. You can buy it and it won't cost you any money. It's like you're sitting there buying yours, like the cheaper ones, like the Squier, something like 120, 130 quid. I suppose you would need to get some sort of amp, and you're really talking about I don't know, about 40, 50 quid to get an amp. I think you could probably better off you could get away with getting an amp second hand, getting used, just like a small thing. There's lots of different options, plenty of videos on it. Just all the students making it louder, and then have it for 6 months or a year. I would also get a gig bag for it. Just if you're going to have it sitting, and you do decide you're not going to play it ever, it'll just get dirty. So if you've got like a soft, just like pick these things up for like a tenner, like a bag to keep it in. It's also if you're moving it about, it'll just keep it a bit cleaner, so it'll be worth more money. But if you're paying £100 or £120 for one of those Squiers, keep it for 6 months, you're going to get 80 quid back for it, something like that. So it's not really costing you. It's not like just £100 gone. You've still got it. And that's why I would justify having so many, because they're all worth what I paid for them. So technically, it's just instead of having money in the bank, and it's an awful lot more fun. Would you rather have a couple of £100 in the bank, or would you rather have, a guitar hanging on the wall that you can play and look at and blah blah blah? And the only thing that really wears out is strings, and strings are about £5 a set or something like that. And you really need to change them every. Depends how sweaty your hands are, but I mean you get away with sort of a few months anyway. So rock on, and if you're thinking about buying a guitar, just buy one. They're great fun. Unless you know somebody who's plays the guitar, I wouldn't go buying a really, really cheap one second hand. I mean, you do occasionally see them, and I buy them, like for 30 quid and stuff like that off eBay and Facebook. But because I know how to fix them up, I can make them work. Whereas generally, if you're buying a sort of even less than 50 quid guitar, you're unlikely to get one that just works immediately without having to do anything to it. It does happen occasionally. You'll pick one up that's really good. You tend to find if you're buying them used, you get sometimes get really ugly shapes quite cheap. You can actually get like quite a good guitar that kind of looks like this sort of thing, but is 50 quid because nobody wants a guitar that looks like that. I'd also advise not buying for your first guitar brand new a guitar that looks like that, because it'll plummet in price. You'll pay 150 quid for it and then try and sell it. It's only worth 50 because it's too niche market. It's only going to appeal to people who want a beginner's guitar and who want to play whatever kind of heavy metal or whatever it is you're playing on, whereas something like this can do everything. And because it's been in fashion for 50 years, I mean, guitars haven't changed in 50 years. There's a famous picture, a meme I keep seeing on Facebook. It shows you like what a phone and a car and a Stratocaster looked like in the 50s, and then it shows you what a phone, or is it a phone, a television, a car. There's like a sort of grid thing, and it's got like the Strat just stays the same in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, now 2020s, and it's like the Strat is just exactly the same. Whereas you look at, you know, like imagine what a car or a telephone or a television changes between those years. It's just, it's almost unrecognisable what it was before. Whereas a Strat pretty much still the same. They did. Everyone was designed. I mean, okay, you get sort of crazy shapes and stuff like that, but still ultimately technology is still the same. It's still just a magnet with a wire wrapped around it and a volume control. That's kind of it. Rock on, and I hope you enjoyed that. That was 40 minutes. I don't know how many people will ever get this far. I probably missed out hundreds of stuff as well. It's basically, that's what you would have got if you'd come round and said, "Oh, I'm thinking about buying a guitar." I would just have said this to you. Apart from, I probably got through it a wee bit quicker because you didn't get a chance to ask me any questions. Rock and roll.